The average commercial airplane flying over your head right now has thousands of cracks in it. Not metaphorical cracks. Actual, physical, documented cracks in the metal skin, the engine mounts, the landing gear components, and the engineers who built it know exactly where every single one of them is. They put them there on purpose. If you are about to board a flight this week, or you just landed one, what I am going to show you today will permanently change how you think about the machine that just carried you through the air at 500 miles per hour. Because the reason modern aircraft are the safest form of transportation ever invented is not because they are built to be perfect. It is because they are built to fail in ways that engineers can predict, monitor, and control. And the alternative, building planes that never crack, would actually kill more people. Let us start with what is actually happening inside the metal every time a plane takes off and lands. Every time an airplane climbs to cruising altitude, a silent battle begins inside its skin. The cabin is pressurized to keep passengers comfortable, usually around 8,000 feet of simulated altitude, while the world outside sits at 35,000 or 40,000 feet, where the air is thinner than at the summit of Everest. That difference creates a pressure jump, up to 7.4 pounds per square inch, across the fuselage walls. It does not sound like much, but when multiplied over the entire surface of a jet, it adds up to tens of thousands of pounds of force. The fuselage acts like a thin-walled cylinder, and this pressure creates what engineers call hoop stress. Imagine the metal skin trying to burst outward with every cycle. For a typical narrow-body jet, that means the aluminum is flexing under about 51 megapascals, or 7,400 pounds per square inch, every time the plane pressurizes. Then, as the aircraft descends, the pressure is released and the skin contracts. This cycle repeats over and over, thousands of times across the aircraft's life. But metal does not heal. With each pressurization, microscopic slip bands form inside the alloy's crystalline structure. Over time, these slip bands collect damage. The real danger comes at the weak points, places like rivet holes, window cutouts, or lap joints where the stress is highest. Here, the local force can spike, even if the rest of the skin is well within its limits. Eventually, a microcrack forms. It is invisible at first, but with every cycle, the crack grows a fraction of a millimeter, following a pattern described by the Paris Law, a mathematical relationship that predicts how cracks lengthen with each pressurization. No amount of careful manufacturing can prevent every flaw. Even the smoothest piece of metal will, under enough cycles, begin to break down. The key is not to deny this reality, but to understand it. Engineers expect cracks to form. They know how quickly they will grow, where they are likely to start, and how large they can safely get before becoming a problem. The threat is not the existence of cracks. It is not knowing where they are, or how fast they are changing. That is why the entire science of aircraft safety is built around predicting, detecting, and controlling these tiny failures, long before they can threaten the people inside. Every commercial airplane is built with the expectation that cracks will form, not as a failure but as a fact of flight. This is the foundation of damage-tolerant design. Engineers accept that flaws are inevitable, and their mission is to ensure those flaws never threaten safety. Residual strength is the first safeguard. Even with a crack, the structure must handle forces far beyond what it will ever face in service. Calculations are precise. A fuselage skin, for example, might be certified to withstand a 6mm crack at a rivet hole under maximum pressure, with a wide margin for safety. Redundancy is woven into every major component. Multiple load paths mean that if one stringer or panel fails, the surrounding structure takes over. This is not just theoretical. Full-scale tests push these designs to failure, confirming that no single flaw can bring down the aircraft. If a crack disables a stringer in the wing, neighboring stringers and the skin itself absorb the extra load. Yet, every part has a retirement life, a strict limit on how many pressurization cycles it can endure before mandatory replacement. For a typical narrow-body jet, that might be 75,000 cycles for the fuselage and 60,000 for a wing rib. These numbers come from fatigue testing and fracture mechanics, not guesswork. Inspections are scheduled according to predictive models using Paris law equations and real-world data to track crack growth from the smallest detectable size. If a 2 mm crack is found, engineers know exactly how many cycles remain before it could become dangerous. This philosophy is called leak before break. The aim is for any serious crack to reveal itself through a visible leak or a detectable signal long before it poses a risk. Damage-tolerant design transforms cracks from hidden threats into managed risks. In 1954, the world's first commercial jetliner, the Havilland Comet, began falling from the sky. 3 aircraft broke apart in midair within a matter of months, killing everyone on board. The cause was invisible. Silent cracks grew deep inside the aluminum skin, triggered by the relentless cycle of pressurization at altitude. At the time, engineers believed in the safe life model. They designed every part to last a set number of cycles, then retire it before any failure could occur. The Comet's designers calculated a generous margin, certain that the structure would remain flawless for thousands of flights. But the sky had other plans. The Comet's signature square windows, a symbol of modernity, hid a fatal flaw. Sharp corners acted as stress concentrators, focusing the force of each pressurization cycle into a tiny region of the metal. With every ascent and descent, the pressure inside the cabin flexed the fuselage, and microscopic cracks began to form at these corners. Metallurgists later measured initial cracks as small as 2 mm, undetectable but deadly. Once a crack started, the repeated stress caused it to grow rapidly, following the Paris law curve, until it reached a critical length. At that point, the aluminum skin could no longer contain the cabin pressure. The result was explosive decompression. The investigation, led by a team from the British Ministry of Supply and the Royal Aircraft Establishment, was a turning point. Engineers built a giant water tank, submerged a Comet fuselage, and cycled the pressure until it tore open. For the first time, forensic science made it clear. Even the most carefully built airplane would develop cracks, especially at geometric discontinuities like window cutouts and rivet holes. The assumption that a structure could remain perfect until retirement was shattered. The real threat wasn't the presence of a crack. It was a crack growing undetected, hidden by design choices that ignored how stress actually flows through metal. The Comet disaster forced the industry to abandon safe life thinking and embrace a new philosophy. Expect cracks, predict their growth, and build every airplane to survive them. This shift laid the groundwork for modern inspection regimes and the damage-tolerant mindset that keeps jets in the air today. A routine island hop over Hawaii became a turning point for aviation safety. On April 28, 1988, Aloha Airlines Flight 243 lifted off with 89,680 pressurization cycles behind it, more than most jets ever face. 30 minutes in, a section of the fuselage suddenly tore away. Wind howled through the cabin, oxygen masks snapped loose, and passengers gripped their seats as the sky opened above them. One flight attendant was swept out, dozens were injured, yet the pilots managed to land the battered 737. The aftermath revealed what years of relentless pressurization and salt air could do. Invisible cracks spreading along the lap joints, corrosion working its way beneath the paint, and metal fatigue accumulating with every flight. Investigators traced the disaster to a network of tiny cracks, each less than 2 mm, threading along the rivet lines. Too small for standard inspections to catch at the time. Corrosion pits, just 0.5 mm deep, had seeded these cracks, which eventually linked up until the structure gave way. The final breach measured only 1.2 mm. The danger lay not in a single flaw, but in the silent buildup of many multi-site damage advancing undetected. The response was swift. The Federal Aviation Administration slashed the allowable inspection threshold for lap joint cracks on the 737-200 to 0.5 mm, and mandated new, more sensitive inspection intervals using eddy current and ultrasonic tools. Airworthiness directives required airlines to monitor every high-cycle airframe, especially those flying in harsh, humid climates. European regulators followed suit, embedding these lessons into European Union Aviation Safety Agency rules. The Windsor 1972 incident had already shown that a single failure could defeat redundant systems if it exploited a common weakness. Now, common mode analysis became mandatory. Every path to disaster had to be found and blocked. Today, inspection schedules and detection limits are set by real-world fatigue data. Multiple load paths are tested and retested as airframes flex and age. Passengers may notice the wings flexing, but the real safety net is the constant search for cracks, expected, detected, and kept in check by a system that assumes nothing is perfect, but nothing should break without warning. Every time you board a plane, you trust a machine built to expect the worst. Cracks hidden by pressurization cycles, metal fatigue measured to the millimeter. Safety isn't perfection, it's relentless inspection, damage-tolerant design, and retirement life limits. The crack is not the danger, it is what you cannot see that matters.